Hey everyone, welcome to Zonan Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. I'm being joined today by two other people who are not at Otakon this weekend. Back on the show for the first time, I think this is actually, Corey, I think this is only your second time on the show. I think I had you on once before.
I think it's third.
Third? Okay. We have Corey Barnes. Corey, it has been a while. Could you maybe just introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay. I'm a director for it's an upcoming show called Central Park from the creator of Bob's Burgers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my day job.
And you've worked on a lot of other stuff in the past too, not in directorial capacity.
No, mostly storyboarding capacity. I was on Big Mouth for years, and which, by the way, just got a 3-season pickup. So I'm happy for all those people.
Three seasons, all at the same time.
Yeah, and happy that all those people get to keep working for a while. Stability is rare in this business.
And joining us also is Karl Olson. Karl, can you give your usual intro? Or a new intro if you want.
It's new intro? I can say that since Corey's on the podcast, I can say relevant. And I've finally done something technically animation relevant. I've helped Corey with some Storyboard Pro automation scripts.
Hey.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've actually contributed something other than snark to the animation community for the first time ever.
It's a far cry from those Toon Zone articles.
Yeah, no, that's pure snark.
Anime superhero, you mean?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can't call it Toon Zone anymore.
This is the first episode that we are recording that has taken place after the horrendous arson attack that happened at Kyoto Animation. So I don't know if you guys really had anything to say about it, but I do feel we do have to point that out. Obviously, this is probably this is the biggest disaster that has happened probably ever in the animation industry. My take is that we're so used to hearing about all these terrible things happening around the globe constantly, nonstop these days. What really troubles me about this is that you can't even connect this to any of the kind of modern anxieties that we're bombarded with on a daily basis, or at least not the ones that we're so accustomed to. It just feels like it comes out of nowhere to such a huge degree, and it's something that could just happen anytime.
Well, it's especially surprising because this kind of thing doesn't happen in Japan very often. It's the largest mass murder since post-war era Japan, whereas we hear about mass shootings constantly here in the States. So it kind of just something like this would just roll off our backs in a couple of days and we just forget about it. The Pulse shooting had more victims than this, but if you ask people what that was, a lot of them won't even remember. But in Japan, this doesn't happen too often. And, this is going to be talked about there for a very long time. It's just like the mass shooting in New Zealand, not too long ago.
It was interesting watching, Japanese news coverage of it on NHK World, and they're like, this doesn't happen here. This is the kind of thing that happens in America. And then they're further worried because it's we thought we had a lid on this kind of problem because of gun control, being so effective and strict in Japan. But it's obvious that any idiot could, basically people in the news saying any idiot could go buy a bunch of gasoline and run up on a building. And that was there were people who really shook that realized it's oh, there's a social contract that we don't even kind of realize we have, around some things that actually one, disturbed individual can just upend things. And I think that was very, I don't know what the long-term impact is going to be. I hope it's going to be a greater discussion of, mental health in Japan, because it's something that's been an ongoing, I think there's been open strides, my impression from watching Japanese media over the past few years, on that kind of thing. But maybe this will I hope that what comes out of this is maybe sort of, cultural proactiveness on it instead of it being something that gets kind of swept under the rug. But yeah, no, it's a real tragedy. I mean, the loss of information. Not completely unprecedented to have fires lose, entire masters and stuff, as has come out with the Universal Studios fire. and all the music masters that were lost in that. But I mean, this is a singular studio and basically their history, outside of the masters that, I mean, the good thing anime is an international industry with local distributors so that there's, lossless masters scattered around the world, but that's the backup now.
Yeah, I mean, depending on ownership, I'm not sure if the animation studio would even hold on to the masters of certain things. It's not really clear.
True.
But yeah, certainly whatever they were the projects they were working on at the time, like the Violet Evergarden movie, the Free movie, and I guess Dragon Maid season 2. Well, who knows if those projects will resurface again. I know that there is a short Violet Evergarden film that is actually just starting to screen now in some parts in Japan, and probably that's going to be probably the last notable thing we see from KyoAni for a while. The future's just so uncertain for them right now. And they did have 2 other studios as well, but they're much smaller. It's unlikely that other projects would be backed up there. But yeah, it's really hard to say what's going to happen with that. Karl, you mentioned that. I guess you're talking mainly about NHK World. Was that the angle they went with a lot of the time? Was that this is the kind of thing you'd expect to see in the United States?
No, that was what people were saying.
Oh, okay.
That's like they're doing the man on the street kind of reactions, and a lot of them are like, "Wow, this is not a Japanese thing." I think longer term, especially seeing how NHK will do documentaries about the natural disasters and about other big traumatic events in the history, I do suspect there'll be probably documentaries at the year anniversary mark or 5-year anniversary mark, kind of going through what happened on these kind of things in the future. Which will be very interesting to sort of see how those are to see the extent to which those are done too, because it doesn't happen for this because of. It's very interesting to sort of see what does and doesn't get highlighted. Like they don't really do. I don't recall seeing anything about like highlighting the subway attacks, for example, which were previously kind of the high watermark in post-war Japan in terms of tragedy. That wasn't a natural disaster. And I think that's the other thing that's like perspective-wise also blunts some things. Is like this is terrible, but like they'll have monsoons that will destroy entire rural villages still to this day.
Yeah.
They'll, and obviously the effects of the 3/11 earthquake and other major earthquakes. I mean, the only thing that I can take from that is that there's a resilience, in the face of tragedy that, leaves me with hope for KyoAni. Like, I feel like if any studio can eventually rebuild from this, it's going to be them for multiple reasons, starting with the general Japanese culture. But then, of course, they were, a highlight studio in terms of how they viewed their talent and staff. And I think in that way, and that's not to say it wouldn't be, it's like people are all like, why didn't this happen at some shitty studio? And like, people immediately scolding people on Twitter like that. Like, yeah, no, it's like all that's immediate, like, be like, what the fuck's wrong with you on Twitter?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, because it happened at KyoAni, I think there will be, it's animation. It's a complex process to restart, but I do suspect we'll see something from them, within the next 2 or 3 years.
There's been an outpouring of donations as well from.
No, it makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. From both, I think you could donate directly to them. Sentai Filmworks has had that GoFundMe going for a while, and
they must have been taught to work out how to get that through with the least amount of red tape and taxes. I'm sure people are actually for once trying to get out of the way of any bureaucracy on this because of the nature of the tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's still
up to $2,271,920.
Yeah, it's still not 100% clear how that's going to play out in terms of actually getting the money to them. But yeah, Karl, I think
they do distribute their some of their products, so it obviously have like a direct line to them.
Yeah, I mean it's not my concern how they manage it behind the scenes, as long as.
Well, of course, there's those the direct digital downloads you can purchase of KyoAni, like stills and stuff, which is I think a great way for anybody who can't do the Japanese bank fees, but want to make sure that there's just directly money going in there to support. And maybe just kind of in general might be a good way for people, for any studio, if those kind of things are available and you want to make sure that studio, the works that you like are being supported, that's pure profit for them.
Yeah. And
basically.
Also, the day after this happened, I actually went to see the Cineplex screening of the Sound Euphonium film, despite the fact that I have never watched Sound Euphonium before. But I went there, and like this screening in downtown Vancouver, it was actually announced, I think maybe just a little more than a week before it happened. There were like screenings in like North Van and Langley that had been confirmed beforehand, but not one in downtown Vancouver. And despite that short notice, like the theater was packed. We got there a little late, and we had to sit in like the front row because those seats were filled. And you know, I had no idea what was happening in the movie because I wasn't familiar with any of the characters. But I'm still glad I saw it. It was a beautiful work to see in theaters. But yeah, it was people came out and supported and cheered at the end, of course.
I think long term that'll be a key angle for support too, is the extent to which you can keep watching these shows on streaming services legally, buying discs, supporting showings, trying to organize showings through film festivals and stuff. I mean, this is all the kind of thing that can help them have long term support bouncing back. I mean, it's one of those things where you hope, I hope this isn't the last time I hear about KyoAni on like global news. And it was now I never wanted to hear about them on Canadian news television.
Yeah.
That started when it's interesting because having NHK on, like I knew very soon, that this had happened, because it really broke into regular, broadcasting. But it didn't really hit until I'm like, wow, Justin Trudeau's like making announcements. Oh, this is getting segments on the National and on Global Nightly. And like, it's reaching into, when something, it's good for the anime community to understand that like, we don't get that attention as a community normally. So for this to have gotten that kind of international, this is part of the nightly news broadcast globally, in countries across the world. Like this is serious.
Yeah. Mm. And of course the one of the most important angles you hear the most about, KyoAni is how, I think as you mentioned before, Karl, how, they actually treated their employees well, which sets them apart from a lot of animation studios. They actually have a staff rather than a bunch of freelancers who are kind of just clinging on. And I'm kind of wondering what this is going to spell for the future, if this is going to have any kind of effect at all on working conditions. Because you had KyoAni before being able to set a good example for the rest of the industry.
I think if they want... I mean, this is the flip side of it is if they continue that, they will have no problem filling the talent gap because they probably already had a lot of people who wanted to work there over other places but couldn't. And so I think it's one of those things where they're going to soak up a lot of talent. I think the industry effect will be there's a lot of people who will be like, both to show support and because it's a better place to be, we'll want to work at the reborn KyoAni. Like if I were an animator in Japan, that would be hands down my goal versus most other studios, because just, certainly before, but now after, I think there's going to be a lot of people who want to support them and help them come back. And, in no small part because they know they will be, it won't go unappreciated.
Mm-hmm. Corey, did you have any take on that?
Karl said a lot of what I was, wanted to say, but the other thing that's been pointed out a lot is that they are a studio that was founded by women, mm-hmm. and mostly helps employ a lot of women, and that's one thing that's always been admirable about that studio is the fact that they have so many people who are full-time staff. And the only other studio I can think about or think that does that is like Studio Ghibli or Polygon Pictures, and like that's it. And been able to do it because Kyoto Animation is actually one of the most, it's actually could be the most, financially successful studios, anime studios. Most of the work they put out profits. Like they don't have to have like that one juggernaut that makes money and then there's 60% of titles that don't make money, which is how a lot of anime studios in Japan work. But I think it's like 9 out of 10 KyoAni works make their money back.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost kind of surprising more people weren't looking to them as a pattern, because they showed that, in fact, treating your staff well, having a gender balanced staff, having a work-life balance, all of this shit pays dividends. You're not just making profitable works, you're making great works, and those great works, it's part of, it's all a positive cycle. You have happy employees who give it their best effort, but you're not destroying them, so they're able to continually give you their best effort. And then you have better product to show for it that doesn't just have immediate cultural import, but long-term cultural import, and you can build franchises off of that. Not many studios can build a free. It's obvious that KyoAni could have.
Or like euphonium.
Yeah, like these aren't things that like I think every studio can pull off. I think for them it's almost inherent to their process. Like if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be them. Because they've put everything else, they've put all the other they've organized everything else around optimizing that. I think not many studios can pull off an adaptation of something like Dragon Maid and have it go from being a really kind of trashy manga to something that's incredibly heartfelt. Still trashy on the corners, but like
the manga is not recommended for that one.
Yeah, no.
Especially if you like the anime, but
yeah, no, but I mean the thing is like not every studio can pull that off and then have everybody happy about it too. Like they did that and it wasn't like fans of the original were pissed off. Like that's the amazing thing is they have like a transformative power on their adaptations that I think no one else could like dream of pulling off. And I think it's another reason why they'll bounce back is because, everything they do, has such a level of quality and passion and respect for the form that, the idea that you're going, it's the heart of it's stronger than any attack on it. It's not going to be an overnight thing. Like when that, satirical comic in France was shot up, like, yeah, you're not going to come back in the next month with who's left. It's just different lead times on these kind of things, but I expect to see the same kind of bounce back. Those people aren't going to be held down, because they have a passion for the work that's, unparalleled.
Yeah. And going back to, just the production conditions, another thing that KyoAni, one thing that defined them in terms of working conditions and productivity, was that they usually had entire shows in the bag, months before broadcast, which is something you just never see with anime production.
Was done months before it aired.
Yep. No, and that's why everything looks good. There's, it's hard, if the whole idea was you had it done months in advance, if you had any cuts that came back if you were planned like that, you had any cuts that came back a little bunk, you had breathing room to fix it. And and since you weren't overstressing your staff to start with, the odds of you having a bad cut was slim, and then the odds of having the bandwidth to go back and fix it were incredibly high. So yeah, everything looks good because it's one of these things where it's like if it's something it's reflective of greater Japanese work culture. It's like everything's like hyper long hours and, getting done last minute and stretching, and yet the companies that thrive are the ones that buck that again and again and again. The companies that thrive in Japan are the ones that are like, no, just treat people right and have like reasonable conditions, and then quality follows.
Like Polygon Pictures, like they interviewed the owner of that place and he said one of the rules is like everyone goes home at 10.
That's a good rule in an animation studio. Yeah.
Well, because otherwise you'll have people deal. It's like I was 30 or 48 hour day, and then for some reason I was hospitalized. Like,
yeah,
it's ridiculous. Yeah, of course you got bad cuts in that situation. You're shot at the end of like 16, not 48. Jesus. But yeah, no, it's tragedy, but I do have hope for KyoAni.
Oh no, me too. Like, I don't know if they, like this is getting into like, were they insured or did they have, offsite backup for any of their work? I know that a lot of materials were destroyed. In a case like the studio where I work now, like if our studio building was burned down and we lost all our material, well, it's all backed up off-site because we're all digital. So I don't know if that's the case with that. I know a lot of anime studios still work on paper a lot.
There's still a lot of paper. I mean, that's part of apparently why it tore through things. And I wonder if that'll be another kind of, there are aspects of how that building was laid out. Like
I'm sure details like that are going to be dissected by the media for months.
it's also one of those things where it's like every fire code, every safety code, every regulation on the books is usually formed out of some kind of a tragedy. So you know what? Maybe we'll see out of these things, different kind of buildings for animation studios in Japan, different kind of regulations, mandatory sprinkler systems, go down a laundry list of things that may change in the wake of this, or at least certainly if KyoAni rebuilds, there's going to be like a laundry list of things they want, even if they don't become something more widely adopted in Japan. But that is the nature of this kind of stuff. I mean, that was, another side of this discussion that I think didn't so much come up on anime Twitter specifically, but just sort of generally in terms of people who like talk about OSHA stuff and whatever online. It's like, yeah, that building was shit. That was a death trap. But out of that may come a greater realization. It's like, yeah, there's been massive improvements in Japanese building codes because of other disasters.
Yeah.
Particularly around seismic. Some, like the health programs on NHK, and it's amazing some of what, their engineers have developed, to make things possible, in such a seismically active area. And maybe this is going to be something where it's all like stronger fire codes and those kind of things, and stronger pushes for retrofitting in older buildings and such. I mean, I think that's the flip side of this strategy is like, it's not that this kind of thing couldn't happen in the States, but if somebody tried the exact same thing, the odds of it being in a building that didn't have, proper fire code stuff would be pretty limited, because we had triangle, waistcoat fire in the States, and, that tragedy changed rules a long time ago. But so hopefully that comes out of this.
Any last thoughts on this while I try to find a way to transition to a different subject?
Hey, Jesse, speaking of sound euphonium film, I heard you ran some films recently.
I did run a film festival recently. Well, it was a one-day film event at Van City Theater. No KyoAni films at the festival, although Van City Theater did have earlier this year the only Canadian screening of Liz and the Blue Bird, which I was not able to see because I was at work at the time that they were screening them. But I was in contact with them around that time, and I just inquired about the possibility of just having an anime film, a full day just devoted to anime films. And there was a lot of wrangling that went on, but we managed to pin it down on June 30th, so a long weekend Sunday, and it went really well. There were good turnouts for every film. We ran Penguin Highway, that sold out. The first Made in Abyss film did fairly well, and then the Girl Who Leapt Through Time English dub, which was produced by Ocean Studios in Vancouver, and also the Canadian premiere of Millennium Actress. It was almost the North American premiere, but Akon unfortunately beat us by one day, which was a little disappointing. But hey, 11 Arts still promoted us. Well, actually, they promoted us as the Canadian premiere, and then in the same breath, they promoted Anime Expo's screening of it as the West Coast premiere, which is not correct.
Yeah, it's guys the same coast.
Yeah, same coast. Last time I checked. But yeah, it was they went really well. With Girl Who Leapt Through Time, we were hoping to have some of the actors who worked on the film actually come and do a Q&A. But unfortunately it didn't work out. But we still wanted to screen the English dub because it was done in Vancouver, and that work is worth showcasing. And that particular dub came from a real high point of Ocean Studios anime output as well, I think in the late 2000s. And actually they at the end, right before the film started, they announced that there was going to be a Q&A, but it was canceled, and everyone in the audience was very disappointed when they heard that news. It probably would have been better not to say that. But overall it went pretty well. I'm hoping, I think there might be plans to do it again. I think Van City Theater's planning to do the second Made in Abyss film, which will be good for Vancouver at least, because Sentai Filmworks stuff is not really getting to Cineplex theaters at all. I think there was like last year there was like that the Chunibyo movie that was that Azoland had announced for Canadian theaters, and then they went back on the announcement and canceled it, which was really disappointing. It seems now though that Sentai is mostly getting stuff into cons. I know that Anime Revolution is planning a couple of to screen a couple of their films in a couple of weeks. I know they're doing the Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon movie, and the Utapri, and I think even a couple other things maybe as well. I don't know about that strategy about just relying on conventions to do that kind of thing, but
I mean, it's not the worst thing, but it's, I think the main thing is that we're now, at a point where anime has enough cultural reach that forcing people to go to a con to see a screening seems kind of shit when you're, you know, sure, it's like a planning thing. Especially, I mean, at this point, you know, like the Sentai guys are the ADV guys. They know everybody at every convention forever and have for the last 2.5 decades. This is easy for them. I don't blame them. Especially since they're probably the largest studio now without a giant, mega corporation backing them. So, you know, I get it. You're not Sony Funimation. You're not Time Warner Crunchyroll, but still.
Yeah. I mean, they're tied up in Verve now, so who knows what's going to come of that.
Well, like they are using Verve as
High Dive is tied up in Verve.
High Dive,
the completely unrelated entity to Sentai Filmworks that just happens to screen all their that just happens to stream all of their stuff.
Yeah, no, and I mean, and even then, High Dive is tied up in them in as much as it's like when Funimation, before they were part of Sony, were buying Sony services for streaming as a white label thing. You know, it's like they're using them as a technology lift. They're not, at this point, as far as I know, any sort of integrated. It would be amazing if, after years of ADV folks talking about, like, one of these days, if we ever get offered FU money, we'll sell out to giant corporations. Like, if that was eventually just put them under the same roof as Adult Swim and Crunchyroll.
But I'm hoping that there'll be I'll have more opportunities like I did with that film festival. Like I said, I think that there may be plans to do another one soon. We'll see. Cause there's still so much stuff that's not getting released in Canada at all. Yeah, it's not just, Sentai Filmworks. There's, like the new Love Live Sunshine movie. History is repeating itself. There are no Canadian screenings planned for that.
Which is nuts because the Love Live fandom up here is obsessive.
Okay, so it is nuts for several reasons. Every single one of those untranslated, delayed lives have screened in Canada so far for Love Live Sunshine. So which means that Cineplex is willing to screen and make money off of these untranslated idol performances, but they will not screen the actual source material for them.
Which is nuts.
Yeah. And
well, it's not like those, like, they wouldn't continually screen those if they were empty, no. But they're regularly filled.
Yeah. Well, and apparently the lack of Canadian screenings isn't the only problem with the Love Live release. Apparently there's huge areas in the United States that aren't getting the screenings. Like, it's badly planned.
Isn't there like none near San Francisco or something like that?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Just like
that's also ridiculous. That is
like literally just Crunchyroll and Viz's staff would fill that out.
Yeah. And I don't know if Funimation is even working with Fathom Events on that one. I think they're just going directly to the theaters. And also, interestingly, their screening of that film is 1 week after the Blu-ray release in Japan, which that sounds like their hands are being tied in some way.
A bit.
If that is what it is, you'd think that the Japanese companies would realize that part of the alchemy of making anime theatrical screenings work is to get the film into theaters before the home video release happens in Japan and everyone just starts pirating it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole basis of why this stuff has been successful.
I mean, it's one of those things where eventually, much as simulcasting has become the norm for shows, and even tiny 3-minute, like, nonsense shows, films are going to have to eventually simul-release. Like, that's got to be the long-term lane because they will make the most money that way. And I know that's tricky to organize, and it's not, you know, it involves a lot of planning, which anime studios, as we mentioned earlier, are sometimes incredibly adverse to. But it's how you're going to make the most bank. It's how you're going to build the most hype. It's how media works these days. It's them's the breaks.
Well, some companies, what they'll just do is they'll like sell it off to Netflix or something, because then they can say, oh, well, it'll stream globally at least.
Yeah.
It won't show in theaters, but.
I mean, that would still be, I mean, I'd actually say it's still preferable to like a shoddy theatrical release, but it's still, you know, it's still not a good theatrical release would be the best.
Yeah, I remember.
Especially because for a lot of this stuff, they really do put in, you know, even for something like Love Live, the theatrical shit looks way nice. It's nice to see it is worthy of that big screen consumption.
Yeah, I remember they were gonna, like, the Full Metal Alchemist live action movie was supposed to be like biggest global theatrical rollout of any Japanese movie ever, I want to say. But like then they said, fuck it, we're gonna sell it to Netflix. They gave up on that plan quick.
Yeah. They watched the movie, probably.
Those wings.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. So yeah, that we'll see what happens with that. Actually, the last time I did a podcast on way back near the beginning of when we started this show, and I did a podcast episode on that first Love Live film not getting released by NIS, and I think it's the one time where I've actually had I've been able to make some kind of impact with this show, because I think that is what got a lot of people talking about trying to push to get the film released here, and we did get it. Like, I'm surprised that people aren't angrier about it, but again, I think it's also being the problems with getting the film released in Canada are kind of being overshadowed by the other problems with that release in the US. It's just a big gigantic mess overall. So
It's a big, you blew it.
yeah, they totally blew it.
I saw Promare at Anime Expo.
Oh,
Speaking of movies that are gonna get screenings soon.
Yeah.
If you like Gurren Lagann, those guys made Gurren Lagann for the third time. It's all the same story beats, but a lot of CGI now. It relies very heavily on CGI.
Yeah.
I saw a thing on NHK talking about the sort of the behind the scenes on that, and it seemed like it was definitely a bit of a lot more CG, and they said it was much more Western, and like we were really going for something more Western in its influence this time. Or
the color palette, especially in the backgrounds, is it's a little more Western graphic novel-y comic. I was reminded of like the Venture Brothers background color palette when I was looking at those backgrounds. But a lot of that CG was done by a studio called X Flag. I'm not familiar with their other works, but G-Kids licensed it for North America. And they have all the American screenings planned out. Their Twitter account says that they will be screening in Canada, but there aren't any.
They did confirm that?
On July 8th on their Twitter, it says, yes, Promare will be in Canada. Details to come.
Oh, okay.
That's like just perfectly vague.
Yeah, I missed that, so that's good to know. It
was in a reply to someone.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
yeah, I was pretty confident they would get that one in theaters up here, but
they have a good track record with Canada screenings.
They're actually not as good as you might expect. Last year, I don't think they got anything in theaters. Oh no, they did. If Mary and the Witch's Flower was that 2018? That if that was 2018, that was the only thing they got in theaters last year. Was that they're much like it blows my mind, as I think Randy and I were talking about this in a previous episode, how they understand the exact formula for always guaranteeing an Academy Award nomination for at least one movie every year, but they can't consistently get their films distributed in Canada, which 11 Arts is has a much better track record, even though it looks like we're not going to be getting a Cineplex screening of Millennium Actress. G-Kids they did get Okos in theaters this year. They did get another Ghibli event in Cineplex as well, and it looks like Promare will happen as well, unless they pull an Azolan Chunibyo thing on us and go back on that announcement, which I don't expect. G-Kids has some other films coming out as well.
Yeah, they're pushing for an award with Weathering with You, which is the new Makoto Shinkai film. But they're going to do the award qualifying run this year.
That makes sense.
That is screening at Toronto International Film Festival. That's actually where its North American premiere is going to be. The new Yuasa film. What's it called again?
I don't remember. He puts out a lot.
He does put out a lot.
He's a productive guy.
Because they had Lou Over the Wall, didn't they?
They did. They did Lou Over the Wall.
Yeah, a Short Walk on Girl is also theirs.
So Lou Over the Wall did not get a Cineplex screening, but it did show up in independent theaters across the country. Ned Short Walk on Girl did not screen across Canada. The only screening it got was actually in Vancouver at Van City Theatre, which is insane. I still can't believe that happened. Sorry, the new Yuasa film is Ride Your Wave.
Yes.
So I don't know what's going to happen with that. G-Kid's track record with getting Yuasa films into Cineplex has been very poor. I don't understand why. I expect at the very least that one will probably show up in like independent theaters across Canada. I don't know about Cineplex.
It'd be nice if they got it in sooner than later, because it's like, it's about surfing and stuff. It's a summery film, If you like wait till like, oh, let me rent, like, oh, we got it playing in November, it'd be like, nah.
Any like summery movie with very refreshingly looking rendered water is always more satisfying to watch when it's like balls hot out in the summer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think we're going to be getting that one till the fall, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then there's another film, Children of the Sea, the new one from Studio 4 Degrees Celsius.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have to. I'm sure the director has done other things. I have to double check that, but that's another one G-Kids is pushing out. No idea what's going to happen with that one. So, Karl, you finally had a chance to check out some of Adult Swim Canada on Stack TV. Is that correct?
Yes, I did the month-long trial of Stack TV, which is a over-the-top channel offering that you can get when you already have Amazon Prime. And it's if you actually pay for it, it's like, I think it's like $14 or $15 a month, but you get all of the local global TV feeds, plus global news, plus like Food Network, Teletoon, Treehouse, YTV, Cartoon Network, Adult Swim Channel, and then like some other stuff that I'm drawing a blank on, like some more reality show type stuff. So I tried that for a month, and then I didn't bother to pick it up because I'm like, this is not worth $15. If I'm going to get back into subscribing for linear television, I'll probably look at like Telespic TV. But it was interesting. Adult Swim Canada was, I got to give credit to their scheduling and just being like, it's noon, time to run Loiter Squad. Like that's fantastic. Like it's, like that was nice. In terms of how it integrates into Fire TV, it's a huge disappointment to me, relatively speaking, because Fire TV has these things now where it will, certain apps can then sort of populate, if they've got linear content, they can populate that into the channel listing on the Fire TV. So it's like you can flip through it. And Pluto TV, which doesn't even really like run anything close to the depth of lineup that it does in the US up here in Canada, integrates perfectly. So it's like you can drop through and start flipping through channels. And I was like, oh, it'd be super slick if like just how there's Pluto listings, there's like the Slack listings or Stack TV listings in there. There's not. To be fair, not every NHK World has a linear channel and doesn't integrate that way, but it's also the one thing in the app. So I'm not choked about it when it's sort of like, I've got to get into a menu to finally get to the linear speeds. I'm like, no, you should be trying to surface that stuff up easier.
The thing about Stack TV is that when it was first announced, we were all kind of under the assumption that it was going to be Chorus's follow-up to Show Me, which has been gone, and it kind of presents itself as a on-demand streaming option, but it's not.
Well, I mean, there is on-demand there, but it's on-demand just the way that on-demand is on like cable. So it's like, here's what's run recently. It's not, here's a whole catalog from that channel. Yeah. And again, that's really hard to justify at like $15 a month. Yeah.
And there are ads in the,
well, I mean, there's going to be there's ads in there's ads in the on-demand stuff and there's ads in the linear. And the ads in the linear are fine because it's the same feed that's going to the rest of the cable companies. The ads to the on-demand at $15 a month on top of, again, paying for Amazon Prime. No.
Well, that's the thing. People, when you're getting something through Amazon Prime, you're going to assume that this is like a standard kind of online over-the-top streaming option. But what it actually is just a way to subscribe to television services through a streaming provider, and
without it integrating well as television services.
Exactly, because on the surface it is an over-the-top online streaming service, but it's actually mainly television subscription, which is not what people will expect. Probably not what they will understand when they're
especially and it doesn't necessarily integrate well. Like I said, like that's the biggest thing. It's like it's one thing if that stuff is there, but it has either enough depth that you don't care that you're living inside of that app, so you have like more channels, or you don't have that many channels, but they're easily surfaced. I don't have to dig to finally get to the linear stuff, or it's easy enough to get to the on-demand stuff. When it's all like I gotta go to this to go to this, like no, it's just like it can't be a chase. And like if they ever better integrate it with that ecosystem, which I mean that's the other thing. It's like it'd be one thing if Stack TV was a service you could get and run anywhere, right? The only way that you can run it is either through Amazon's like online stuff or through Fire Stick. So it's like, okay, so it should really integrate, it's really meant for Amazon's platform. Why is it not integrated well with that platform? It's not like it doesn't have the excuse that other, like Netflix is better integrated to Fire TV than Stack is. And that's totally backwards.
Yeah. But as things stand right now, if you want to access Adult Swim Canada,
it's a super reliable way. Yeah. And honestly,
if you don't have a TV subscription and you want to access Adult Swim Canada, this is probably going to be. Actually, I don't know if it's going to be your best option because if you're on TELUS, get the Pick 5.
If you're on TELUS, get Pick 5 instead.
Yeah.
But the flip side with Pick 5 is then you've got that's that one device. If you want it on multiple devices, I will concede. It's like, so long as you're fine being in Amazon Prime Video world, you can Stack TV is a solid way of doing it. It's, 15 Canadian isn't the worst thing a month. I'm sure most people here spend more on other bullshit. It's just, is it the best money that you can spend on media? No.
Also worth considering that Amazon Prime is still like substantially cheaper in Canada than it is in the U.S.
Yes, but I mean that's the other side of it though. That's the other side of that though is also it's like you already have Prime, you already have a lot of great content to watch, so you have to say I want this other specific content on top of it.
The way I interpret that is that Amazon has had a very tough time actually breaking into this market.
I think the problem is that Amazon's depth of other stuff here, not just in terms of content for that service, but also just like I want to buy item from Amazon. There's not as much, and oftentimes it can't get to me as quickly. So you can't charge the same premium as you can in the US because the depth of what they can offer is easily 10 times slimmer, and it's not as, they don't have the volume discounts, so it's not as cheap. And unless you're lucky enough to live in basically Vancouver or Toronto, and even then, it may still not be in the local warehouse, but odds of you getting it with like the super quick Prime, like is not great. Like I ordered a phone recently. I have Prime, and that shit bounced around postal system for 2 weeks before it got to me on Vancouver Island with Prime.
Yep.
So that's why you can't. That's why you can't charge, even the same number in Canadian dollars for Prime as you can in the States for Prime. It's not like the service is simply not up to snuff, and it will be a while.
Regarding Adult Swim Canada specifically,
I mean, I feel like it's. If they ever want to flip that model to the U.S. network, that would be like if they ever wanted to add we're going to just like roll TNT and TBS into one thing and then we're going to have an Adult Swim channel or something. If they ever reallocate their channel space, because there's no way you add a new digital channel in 2019.
Not 2019.
No, that shit isn't happening. So if they ever,
they'll sooner destroy an existing channel.
Exactly.
And, change what they did with Spike TV.
Yeah. No, if they ever spike TV, basically, if they ever spike to Paramount something to X to Adult Swim it, this is a great start. And you just add Toonami and print money.
Yeah. In the previous episode, I did mention that they were running ads during 11-minute programs. It does appear that they have stopped doing that. I don't really know what the situation was.
Sure, they set their thing wrong. Because we know there is a human intervention at that station.
Possibly. maybe they listen to feedback. I think they are still making small improvements to the station now and again. I also think that the ad break issue, because they still splice additional ad breaks into 30-minute programs. I think they, like, the people who actually run the station are fighting that because they do only run the ad break, the proper, like, Adult Swim, one in the middle, one at the end of the program kind of format properly with Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard from them, they said that they're looking into trying to get that format in other programs. So I think that, the way Core sells advertising space, they don't do it by program. They do it in ad blocks throughout the day. So they're going to make a deal with advertisers that will run your ad X number of times throughout the day. And the more slots they have to do that, the more money they can get. It doesn't matter what the program is or what the actual ratings for the program are a lot of the time. That's a lot of ad sales work in Canada.
Well, that's very common. Like, even down here, radio does it a lot too. It's just like, there's certain prime slots for, like, new shows and premieres and prime time in general. But then there's just the rest of the day, which is just, mass ad filler where you can buy tons of blocks of time for not a lot of money per individual slot. And then you have, like, overnights, which a lot of times are just like make goods or just like giveaway time for for bartering or run a schedule type ads where it's like, we have to run this, so we'll run it in the cheapest spot.
Yeah. Anything where they're like, legally you have to run this many PSAs. It's like, get ready to listen to like 1 trillion PSAs around about 4 a.m. on any AM station in the United States.
I appreciate that they're still making some small improvements. Also, one thing I noticed on the August schedule, which is just starting to come out now, is they haven't gotten rid of those Hollywood movies that they run throughout the day, but they're moving them earlier on the weekends so that they're a little further away from the prime Adult Swim 8 p.m. plus hours. They were actually starting to go past 8 p.m. a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I think they are sensitive to those kind of concerns, and they're still making little adjustments here and there. They also are running more promos for premieres as well, even though they haven't been able to get 2 of the last major Adult Swim premieres because they are Netflix exclusives, Mike Tyson Mysteries and Final Space, which are tied up in deals that were made before.
And to be fair, Final Space didn't start out on Adult Swim either. TBS just decided to fuck all this cartoon bullshit. They gave up on that really quick.
It's bad that we get so screwed on the Netflix stuff there.
Their premieres of the Jellies were not in line with the U.S. because they're supposed to be day and date. Yeah. They delayed season 2 and just ran season 1 again to take up the time it would have run to run Mike Tyson Mysteries. But it looks like everything's going to align again when Squidbillies comes back in August. So
there was
something to look forward to.
Content issue with an episode of the Jellies, and they had to keep delaying it over and over until they were finally able to run it.
Wow. Oh, okay. Maybe that factored into it as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What did Tyler do that's so transgressive?
I don't have it right in front of me, but I don't want to say it had something to do with the Wu-Tang Clan. But I think there was something like there was like a name issue with the Clan or something that they had to like go back and change an episode.
Yeah, but apparently all the premieres coming up in Adult Swim soon, like Squidbillies, more Robot Chicken.
Yeah.
What else is coming up?
Rick and Morty and Primal.
Yeah, so that's all stuff that obviously is going to be no problem.
And plus, Adult Swim Canada is going to get
Harley Quinn.
That's such a win.
That is a big win. I know that there are some specific people who were very upset about the fact that we're getting it on linear and the U.S. isn't. Important to emphasize, though, that by getting it on Adult Swim Canada, it basically means that there will be no way to stream it in Canada at all.
Probably. But you know what? You know how you'll be able to stream it. You buy Prime, then you buy Stax TV.
You're technically correct.
You pay, and there's technically a way to do it.
Somewhat correct.
I mean, the problem is the way to stream it in Canada is going to be indicative of the forthcoming streaming hyperfraction trouble that's on the horizon here. It's like this is Canada's first taste of it, where America is going to be drowning in it in the next 2 years.
Yeah. And I mean, also I want to say that I'm starting to think that the prospects of Toonami coming to Adult Swim Canada are not only very good, I think it may actually be inevitable, because Toonami is now being utilized for a lot of in-house stuff from Warner. And like I understand there's a whole bunch of anime co-pros that Warner is basically directly involved in. Do we know how many?
There's like
of those
7
are
or 8.
up? 7 or 8.
Yeah, and if you've got that much, that's basically enough to start filling things. And then this doesn't even get into the extent to like that's the Warner co-pros that you would go to Toonami in a dub form and probably Crunchyroll in a sub form, but then it's all like Crunchyroll still has a lot of stuff on the roll currently.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like the merger has impacted any of the plans to do more original content for them, both in terms of stuff being done in the States for them and in Japan. There seems to have been no open indications, at least, that that's going to turn down. And I don't think that stuff gets made for Warner, and then they're not like, we got to push that through through the relevant adjacent things. Like, so long as it's not completely out of the Toonami Adult Swim line to run any of that, it would make sense to put it there in dub form. Well, since it's the second it's there in that format, why wouldn't you then, with any international partner, push that? And that's how you end up with the Toonami on Adult Swim Canada.
I mean, right off the bat, like in September or October, like they've got at their immediate disposal.
Clean 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh, probably more than that. I mean, they got Harley Quinn, they've got Genlock, they've got Fooly Cooly, and they'd have to license season 1 from Funimation, but they should have direct access.
That would be amazing if they didn't, though.
They just played
I don't know.
It just ran progressive and alternative.
Yeah.
that would be the most
happen.
Canada thing to happen. Let's be real.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. But
I mean, they go season 2 for years and not season 1.
That'd be amazing if like literally all they ran was alternative, because it'd be like it's the least fully cooly in some ways.
Yeah, but they've got even Mob Psycho 100 is something they could probably.
Oh man, that would be
fairly direct access to.
That seems like a pretty reasonable bet.
Yeah. And like throw in some Samurai Jack reruns.
Yeah, well, I mean that's already a significant part of their schedule. It's like.
And I'm guessing that Primal's probably isn't going to be part of Toonami though, because I know that.
Nah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Gendy Tartakovsky was not. He wasn't a big fan of the idea of having Samurai Jack as part of Toonami. I mean, maybe they'll have reruns of it on Toonami, but definitely not premieres.
Well, I mean, and that this would be another opportunity for. What might be where there'd be differentiation between the U.S. and Canadian blocks, is they'd be like, look, in Canada, this is what fills out the time.
Yeah.
Tough shit. It's getting a rapper and bumper. It's like, and he also may not care. May not know to care even.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, yeah, again, the real question though is that I don't think it's, are we going to get Toonami? It's, are we going to get Toonami with any degree of third-party content at all?
To what extent does it end up aligning with the U.S. block? That's the big question.
Can they spend the money to get both U.S. and Canada rights whenever they acquire something from an outside distributor like Funimation?
I mean, it's not even necessarily that the U.S. branch of it has to do it. It's like, well, can they convince Chorus to spend that money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if they can make it part of their current agreement with Chorus, where like the licensing deals are made at the U.S. end, and
they have
who knows,
whatever costs come through. Yeah, I mean, you never know.
I don't know what I don't know how that would wind up working.
That shit gets really esoteric real fast.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's just a matter of just picking up, like when a brand new show comes out, that they grab it at the same time as the U.S., it could develop into something manageable. I don't know. I don't work in licensing, so I can't make educated guesses on this. I'm just a pundit. But yeah, it's something. I think, is Toonami coming? I think that's something to keep an eye on. Probably over the next few months.
I mean, the other thing is if they get it, it opens up. If they get it, and especially if they're willing to get some third party content, they can break up the day a bit more. They can do. I mean, I think if you get it and you've got a 24-hour network, it would be slick to have an afternoon Toonami block with kind of lighter weight stuff in it. Like that would be, still unedited, but like stuff that isn't like, it's hard TVMA because of guts and tits.
Yeah. I'm really hoping they get Food Wars. I think if they get any third-party content, that'd be great.
That would be... It'd be really funny if they got Food Wars and they're like, yeah, we're in Canada. We don't have to like do shit to this.
Exactly. So, there are some edits in the US version, and then if
people would be so choked if we got Food Wars and it was like showcase style and just raw as fuck. Damn it, Canada got the good Food Wars. It's like, it's barely different. What do you care?
There's like,
it's jokes.
I think the total edits that have been made amount to less than 2 seconds so far in the US version.
Not even worth Kyle Pope coming out of retirement for that.
Oh boy. Hey, that was a popular column.
Dude, he's a nice dude.
Honestly, my understanding of the old Toonami block was largely based off of reading his edit lists, which was not a good way to understand it, because you see this, like, it emphasizes the stuff that's cut out, but I had no appreciation for the stuff that was left in.
Yeah. No, and like, I mean, he kind of like, even he was aware of that. Like, I say as a guy who was like, I hung out with Kyle Pope every day or every like week for like years at the local anime store. Yeah, like he understood that he was like, there was a certain tongue-in-cheek, smart-ass aspect to it that maybe was lost, particularly on younger readers. He was not out there to make Adult Swim cry, just trying to make, so people knew what was missing and hopefully get them to then say like, oh, I should go out and buy and engage this other, with the original content. It's kind of cool that we don't have to like chase that. And like, I think he's glad that he doesn't have to sit there and like step through every frame of an episode of Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. Even if they don't get third-party content, I'm still hoping that someone will finally broadcast Dragon Ball Super in Canada, because we are. It started airing in a station in the UK, so we are now the only major English-speaking market in the world where it's not airing on television.
Now somebody is getting the Broly movie up here, right?
Crave linear stations are running the Broly movie on July 31st.
Because our linear networks aren't going to be running that anytime soon.
It's weird. Like, it's not running on US Premium, but randomly Crave is getting it. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and suspect this has nothing to do with anything bigger going on. And it doesn't look like it's currently scheduled to show up streaming on the on-demand side. It could be wrong. It's not on any of the upcoming lists, but those things miss things all the time. So, yeah, who knows? It's still cool. That's the first big Dragon Ball screening to air here, I think, since or the first Dragon Ball title to air here since Dragon Ball GT ended. Oh, actually, I think YTV did run one episode of Dragon Ball Z for an anniversary event once, for YTV's 30th anniversary or something. They ran an episode of Dragon Ball Z, which didn't make any sense. I think since then, basically. I don't know. It's weird. Also, on that note, there's still no news on WoW World at all. At this point, it's supposed to launch September 1st at the latest, or August 31st at the latest. I think they have kind of conceded that no one actually cares about how closely they follow that deadline. At this point, I'm willing to accept the possibility that it might not even happen.
Yeah, I wonder if that got a little... some of that hinged on Verve-related stuff, and then the Warner stuff went through. And Warner's streaming situation has gotten weirder since the last time we've talked, thanks to HBO Max. And
it's funny, when Warner announced their service, I think just a few months ago, they said the service would be coming to Canada. This was confirmed. Mm-hmm. Now it's not so clear. In fact, I think it's safe to say that we know less about what Warner is going to be doing with their streaming strategy now than we did several months ago.
Well, they swerved on all the stuff that I would have thought would have made sense in what all they've picked up. It's you've got already in set, this multi-channel streaming service kind of setup. You actually have a couple of them. Here's the thing that's weird. It's not DirecTV, which is, here's an over-the-top linear option. It's not Verve, which is an over-the-top on-demand option with, I think, occasional live stuff. No, it's some third thing.
Yeah,
because HBO...
It is HBO Max. They have recently confirmed is the name of their new service, which raises a whole shit ton of questions about what their actual strategy is with this. And
especially because they announced it and then they're like, it's going to have content, and like they list off like what the other content from, and it's just like a shit ton of like classic Turner thing. Like it's all the Turner channels.
Yeah, they're going to pull in a lot of stuff from the Warner and Turner and HBO libraries.
Yeah. Which again, is this going to have library depth or on-demand cable depth? Right? That kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I would love if they put, like, all the old Cartoon Network stuff on it.
Holy shit, that would, like, if they had that, I would be tempted to get a VPN to get at that shit, for fuck's sake.
Well, apparently, like, if...
Well, they showed the Boomerang logo during that stuff, too. So, like, if you're saying Boomerang, like that, is it just the new stuff that's on Boomerang, or is it, like, the deep cut Boomerang stuff, right?
Yeah, and also, like, well, first of all, I remember reading that if you have HBO, like, you already pay for HBO or HBO Now, you're gonna get it by default. But also
in the States.
Yes, in the States. But also, what does this mean for the other streaming services they have going? There's the Boomerang one, there's DC Universe, then there's, the Verve, family of streaming companies, but.
Yeah, it seems like Verve, they're saying, like, the fact that they're doing this rather than using that brand or using DirecTV means it's like DirecTV is going to still be their like linear OTT play or basically their like cable over the internet play. And then like Verve is like, I guess they figure it's like that nerd shit makes enough profit on its own, has a big enough audience. We don't really, they haven't felt the need to, just stomp it out like Drama Fever or whatever, right? Like they haven't, they don't seem to be, they seem to be leaving that well enough alone. So maybe that's just something they're going to let ride. But at that same time, it's like there's a bunch of stuff tied up in Verve that I'd like to see maybe be more internationally accessible. Though I guess a lot of that Nickelodeon library stuff that Verve has for some totally bizarre reason for now. I wonder how long that'll last now.
That's
I really don't feel that's going to be long for this world, because it would be such an easy move for Viacom to claw that stuff back. And then all of these Viacom-based linear channels that they have full of catalog titles that they have on Pluto TV, instead of that being region locked to the States, just everywhere.
Viacom keeps saying they're gonna launch some kind of platform, but they don't seem to have made
and they keep selling progress. They keep selling stuff to Netflix exclusively. So
well, I mean, like the extent to which, like I said, the extent to which they seem to have, they've set up a platform, they bought one, and they've put their catalog stuff on it, and that's a great move. It's just locked to the States. Like if we had Pluto TV up here in Canada, we'd be laughing because they have so much great stuff on there. A channel that just runs old classic Doctor Who all the time. Done. I would legit pay for, like, Pluto TV is free. I would legit, like, if that was $15 a month, I might do that. Cause it's actually got a lot of shit on it. It's got like actual news channels and shit on it too. This is one of those like ongoing American living in Canada bitching things. It's like, man, States has a lot of good free content, in both the linear and on-demand space, and Canada is
the digital kind of space.
Yeah. We've got CBC Gem. We got CBC Gem. That's it.
CBC Gem. And hey, CBC Gem is still like the best positioned Canadian streaming service to actually be competitive in the upcoming, the further fragmented landscape where we're entering.
Oh, CBC Gem could actually legitimately open up. It's like CBC Gem should be like NHK World long time. It should be Canada's soft power, internationally available free option. Frankly.
They have quite a few currently running international hits right now.
Yeah.
So they're pretty well positioned.
Like they're well positioned to introduce Canadian stuff to the world by that.
Yeah.
It's literally just turn the geo lock off on the Canadian content.
What's interesting about the thing about HBO Max is that they have decided to put the HBO brand center to this service, which is going to create a lot of complications for them, not only coming to Canada, but like internationally, because those HBO rights are all over the place.
That's scattered.
Around the world.
Everybody's got like that. Like AT&T seems to be making a lot of moves. It's like, that's a great first step for America. Now, how are you going to make that an international play? And it's just like, international question mark.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that
you do realize you're playing a global game, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously they had absolutely no idea that this was the direction they were going to take this service when they made the existing deal with Crave, where Crave is essentially the Canadian version of HBO Now or Go or whatever.
I mean, was the shit assembled yet? Was that still a Time Warner deal rather than AT&T Time Warner deal?
It's not clear. I'm assuming, I'm guessing that was probably in the works before the merger happened. But I mean, how long was the merger in the works for? It's such a big mess, and it's just Warner's connected to so many like crucial properties. It's.
Well, I mean, Warner, it's one of those things where it's like AT&T wanted to have content because Comcast has content, and they want to be in a position where they can have something to leverage against Netflix, which is using most of their bandwidth, as it is for all ISPs. And that's, I get why, but the thing is they still don't understand it's all like the reason, and despite being relatively close to a company that does understand this and owning, having partial ownership of Crunchyroll for a long time and now total ownership of it, this is a world game. You are playing for all the chess pieces on Earth. And the idea that you can kind of set up something in the States in a market that's already fragmenting and have that, thrive is not a great move. Yeah. You need to be in a position where you're able to, you can't just say like, well, we're in the richest market on Earth. It doesn't matter. Like Netflix is clearly.
What about China?
Well, I mean, China, per capita. I'm thinking in terms of like.
Probably won't be allowed in there anyway.
Yeah, they probably won't be allowed in there anyway. But I mean, in terms of large markets, though, it's very interesting to see the extent to which Netflix has been much more serious about picking up content for both, just Asia generally, but like specifically, like they're getting Indian stand-ups to do specials for them. Like that's them knowing that like their next billion subscribers are going to come. Like, and with the advantage of being like, okay, well, if you do that, they're still English speaking. You can still actually market that to other parts of your service. But understanding that, like, you have to aim around that kind of, you can't just make content for America. You have to make content for the world. And that means maybe, tapping different, lines of talent. All that, the Fuji TV deal with all of the hassle that comes with that in terms of anime not turning up as soon as it should. It's all like that. Puts a whole bunch of content on the surface. Or on the surfaces content on the service, that otherwise, that the regular U.S. players don't even normally think of. Like, nobody in America would have licensed Terrace House, the Japanese Real World, but Netflix did, and it's a brilliant move because that gains them market share throughout not just Japan but Asia generally, and then has backflood in terms of like, hey, all those, it's another thing you can recommend to your anime viewers because if they're already kind of into that culture, maybe they want to get a little deeper. Like it's like they're playing at just a higher level of thought here, and AT&T's being good about getting Warner to synergize finally, almost too much because anything that they can't franchise they seem to be killing. Or constraining, but that's not going to be enough if they're only making it for the U.S. market. That's what I'm getting at.
Apparently, their big the unveiling of what HBO Max will encompass and what it will be is going to be in October. Apparently,
that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Now the thing is that if they are planning to launch this thing in Canada, we're either going to get this thing with HBO Max in the name, but no actual HBO content, because Crave currently has all that stuff.
Or that shit's going to claw back.
I don't know if they can claw it back. They're going to be able to claw it back that easily.
They might have to pay for it, but I mean, there may be outs.
Something to expire.
I don't think that Bell is going to play ball with that.
They won't be happy.
HBO is central to Crave. If they lose HBO, Crave is basically dead. And I guess this kind of means that Crave is might already Crave may already be dead because I don't know how viable it's going to be without that HBO content.
Long term,
Gem being the more viable service because they have their own IPs they can fall back on, whereas Crave they have very little once you remove the HBO stuff, because that's been the recipe for their current success.
And I don't see them retaining that long term. If nothing else, they'll run the clock out.
Yeah.
They're not going to as it stands, just because the companies have changed hands, there may be things in the contract that let them exit, existing rights agreements. That's entirely plausible. That would not be weird boilerplate at all to have in these kind of contracts. So as it stands, they may already be essentially on borrowed time. Certainly it's not like I highly doubt any of that shit was sold in perpetuity. So it's just a matter, just like how, HBO, Max is going to get Friends. So weird that matters. What?
Yeah. Claw that back from Netflix.
Exactly.
That's another thing. Netflix is not losing Friends in Canada. That is still in place for the foreseeable future.
That's an interesting tell, man.
Yeah.
Maybe that's about HBO Max in Canada.
Yeah. So, and this also brings us back to the question of Verve. Are they going to expand Verve? Verve is still only in the United States.
I wish even a limited Verve, even a Verve that was still $10 a month and only had just CR and high dive. I would spend up from what I'm spending per annual CR to get CR high dive in a package.
Yeah.
As part of Verve. I think they'd probably be able to throw the Viacom stuff. I bet is probably tied up because a bunch of that stuff is, all of that Nickelodeon stuff is available as part of Stack TV. I got to finally watch the Hey Arnold movie. It's very nice, by the way. If you haven't done your free trial of Stack TV, that's one reason to trial it.
There you go.
Because all that Viacom stuff is locked up in there. I don't see that I don't see that stuff staying with Verve, certain in the US, let alone internationally.
But if they are planning to massively delay the launch of HBO Now, maybe launching
Max?
HBO Max. If they are planning to massively delay the launch of HBO Max internationally.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll use Verve as a temporary way to fill that void with certain things. Maybe that's optimistic of me hoping that maybe they'll have some outlet launched.
It would be
with Cartoon that would be able to have Cartoon Network and Adult Swim streaming, because that's the only thing I really care about in the end.
I have
the whole reason I would want HBO
suspicion we're stuck with Stack for that for a while.
Well, they don't even have on demand for Cartoon Network on Stack.
I know, but I suspect that that's as good as we're gonna get for a minute.
Yeah, it's more questions than ever.
This is what happens with all the shit fragmenting.
This is also what happens. You're dealing with legacy companies that have had deals in place for decades.
Well, and they have the pattern of here's how we make our money. We try and make money in our primary market, and then what we're really hoping is we can make a lot on the back. It's popular enough that we can then relicense it everywhere else, but we then just get big sacks of money for that license up front, and then it's everybody else, in terms of that company making a profit on it. That's on whoever we licensed it to, but we're already in the clear. And you see that in Viacom willing to sell the other two of their Nick classic reboot movies to Netflix. That's just sort of saying you know what? It's way easier for us just to get this bag. We're done. We're in the black. You guys figure out how to make money on it. We don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're saying a couple upcoming TV movies based on some of their current shows, like The Loud House and Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. And that's even more surprising because those are the ones that should be easy for them to make work. Instead they're nah. I wonder to what extent Viacom sort of in a weird position of they now have great access into many homes by having Pluto. Anybody can suddenly consume linear.
Yeah, but how many people use Pluto or know about Pluto?
Yeah, it's true. It's still pretty niche. But the thing is they could build that into something that basically bypasses any sort of cable stuff, and they can just sell ads on it, and they could make it run internationally. But at the same time, they could just easily say we're a production studio. We're just gonna make shit and sell it to Netflix or Amazon or whatever, and just get our as an older media company, does it just simply make more sense for them to think in terms of what's a secure bag, just making something that we sell?
Yeah, but the trend with these streaming services have been that if a brand is not well known or recognized, a company is more likely just to scrap that service and create a new one from scratch with a new brand. or completely, or just do some kind of relaunch or something. And the thing is that most people have never heard of Pluto at all.
They only bought that this year.
Oh,
I mean, because it would have been
okay.
an independent thing. So they only bought that, this year, and they've been incredibly aggressive in the United States in using all of their legacy brands and content to the extent where there's a Spike TV exclusive Pluto channel with all the old Spike TV content. Like, they understand that, like, hey, people marathon stuff. Maybe we can just have channels marathon and given stuff, and we'll just put whatever ads we want. We can sell during it. But like I said, part of the problem is that, I think it's still very U.S. focused. Like, their selection up here in Canada is incredibly limited. It's like not even a tenth as many channels. And, so long as that's the case, okay, you're playing an interesting game in America, which already has great depth in just over the air sub-channel access, let alone other free on-demand, solutions. And so, like, you're competing in a competitive market rather than, like, nobody seems to be, looking for the open spaces here yet.
Yeah. Well, we keep talking about how the market's going to completely stratify, and everything eventually is going to, everything we find on streaming is eventually just going to be hosted directly by the company that owns it. But it's just, things are, as Corey mentioned, things are so tied up in decades of existing agreements. I don't think we're actually going to see that reality.
Well, I think Canada's going to be the slowest to get it too, because we have our oligopoly up here.
Things are going to be really messy as a result of that, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because it seems that when things are messy, we tend to get access to more stuff.
Well, also a whole bunch of the shit's going to fail. Like, a whole bunch of this direct stuff is going to just shit and die. Like, that's not even a question.
And we keep talking about how messy all this stuff is, and then there's, of course, the big elephant in the room, which is Disney Plus, which is going to be, it's possible that people are overestimating that service a little bit.
How international are they going to be able to be versus Disney, of course, has plenty.
Extremely.
Disney, of course, has of course plenty of its own existing agreements. So how different is each country's Disney Plus going to be based on, but we already sold the rights to, Toy Story for the next 6 years to somebody broadcast, right?
I think they've been waiting for a lot of that.
I think they've tried to, I think that's part of why they've put this off so long, is they really do want to avoid that as much as possible, but I'll be still curious to see how it lands.
Guy and like Bob's Burgers, they gotta wait for the next decade before they goes back.
But they've got Simpsons though.
Yeah. And, well, the company that owned all the rights to that was in the Fox family, so they're gonna nuke that Simpsons World app or whatever it's called, and just bring everything back to Disney Plus.
Yeah. Which will actually make it available outside of the United States for streaming. Not that I have any plans to subscribe to Disney Plus at all. But yeah, I think that's the thing about Disney Plus, is we're gonna see an incredible amount of consistency between what's available in every country, because they're gonna have so many original productions right out the gate on that. They've already clawed back the rights to numerous things, pretty much all the important stuff, you could say. And then, the most important stuff, like their central library of films, I don't think they ever really let a lot of that stuff out. Or at least not for very long. So, we'll wait and see. I
say it goes back in the vault.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll,
I think,
and
I guess we still have more tech companies getting in this, because there's Apple's thing, which again commissions stuff from many of these different studios. So, does Apple, start having to make like Netflix and vertically integrate, which, at which point does, Amazon has its own studios thing and offices in LA. I mean, does that become an Apple thing to do too? Are they able to, just because you have, are they able to just capitalize on the old media companies like Viacom being like, fuck it, I'll sell it to you? I mean, it's the next 2 or 3 years are going to be weird, and it's going to be annoying because there's inevitably going to be things that you want to watch, and you're going to be either in Canada, they may not literally be available, above board, easily, or you're going to be in the States, all of this stuff will have an option, but you're going to be so how many streaming services do I need? How easy or hard is it to cancel them so that you can like, oh, they've dropped a new season on this app. I'm going to subscribe for the month and then kill it.
Yeah. But I that's another thing is that in a lot of the commentary you see about the future streaming services on like tech stuff, like tech sites and stuff, people seem to be operating under this assumption that eventually everyone's only going to want to subscribe to one thing, which is not correct at all. Cause like, you know, we saw Netflix recently falter with their not drop in subscribers, but
rate slowing.
Well, actually, no, they did drop in subscribers domestically.
Yes.
Not globally. It caused their stock to fall a lot, actually.
Well, because
Yeah.
all of their stock is built
did.
on this
Quite
future
did,
expectation that they will be television. And to any extent to which that's not true, that's going to take that energy out of the stock.
Yeah. But I still think that the idea that, you know, Netflix falters, makes any kind of falter, and then suddenly everyone's just going to drop it and subscribe to Disney Plus instead. That narrative is ridiculous. Obviously, we shouldn't underestimate Disney Plus, but yeah, Netflix is in a really weird kind of position right now because on one hand, I kind of want to root for them because they're still the disruptor. They're the ones
like
who are
all
kind
these,
of taking on the
all these
larger
companies
studios.
helped create them, and now that they've become what they are, they want to take all their stuff back.
Yeah. Oh, you've proved that this works, and now we want to like gut you. The question is that okay? So you took it all back. Where? Just America. So who's making the other like $6 billion people's worth of money? Netflix. Stupid.
But the thing is that if Netflix were to somehow vanish, we'd definitely be worse off.
If anything, we get bought out.
Yeah, they would get. Go ahead.
Sorry?
I said if anything, they would get bought out.
They get bought out for their technology, probably by another technology company. Like Netflix doesn't vanish, Netflix becomes an Alphabet company or an Apple company. Because the odds of them letting any other kind of integration happen, I think in the US, like I think in terms of a media company buying it, it's like I don't think Disney or Warner or Comcast would be allowed to buy them. I guess that kind of leaves Sony or Viacom. I think those are pretty slim ideas as well.
Netflix is worth more than Viacom on Wall Street.
Exactly. That's not going to happen for that reason.
Netflix
so it's
would
like
buy
so,
Viacom.
Yeah.
I could see that happen.
That would actually be a great combination because then they'd have, a whole studio system and library that would basically leave them, in a solid place. I'd let Viacom merge back with CBS first and also maybe pick up Discovery Scripts. But, that would be a way better thing for Netflix to eventually buy, in an incredibly leveraged way, probably.
Yeah. But I mean, you also have Netflix just making questionable decisions about, or even bleeding their own properties. Like we just saw with Tuca and Birdie, the other day when they made the highly controversial decision to cancel that show after one season.
Yeah,
that took me completely by surprise.
Yeah.
Well, and then it's like, well, what do you mean we didn't like tell anybody? I'm like, well.
Well, they searched their Twitter feed for the words Tuca and Birdie, and it doesn't show up very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even if it's sort of like they looked at their algorithm and it's like, oh, this is only playing in one region and we need it to be more of an international or whatever. It's all like, yeah, but here's your problem. And I mean, your own algorithms say to do this. It's like, you gotta at least run two. Like,
well, I mean, Tuca and Birdie, I'm pretty confident will probably get rescued by another company.
Like, I think long term, like, if Netflix really does sort of say, like, we always cancel when it's, like, algorithmically optimal for us, it's so easy for somebody to beat you over the head with your own move if it's the same move every time, because the move is then just saying, oh, did you not lock that down in perpetuity? Oh, well, then we're going to pick up season 6. Oh, you don't have those creators on an exclusive deal for any shows afterwards. We're going to grab those creators from you, and you're going to become and creators aren't going to want to deal with you because they're going to be paranoid. They're always going to get canceled after 2 seasons. Like, if they follow too much of a pattern, it will kill them. Like, that's the thing that can hurt Netflix the most, is just saying, like, we follow this sort of, you know, we have our version of the syndication rules and we follow that blindly and we don't inspire any loyalty by the rest of our behavior. Then, like, creatives will avoid them. At least in terms of any sort of second show. Like, they'll get their initial Netflix check and then they'll be like, peace, like Disney's offering me more to leave, and because they've said 3 seasons, not 2.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, speaking of Netflix screwing up things, Ava.
I was just gonna say, let's.
I rewatched DOE. I rewatched Evangelion.
Same.
It's beautiful in HD. Like, that's nice.
I mean, certainly compared to the manga entertainment DVD we've been stuck with for 15 years, yes. Yeah, I have not watched Ava. I did go back and watch Gunbuster when Netflix launched Ava. Did you watch the new dub or just the new? I watched
episode 1 of the new dub, and it's
same.
Yeah. It's just like it feels like what I feel like a lot of modern dubs are. They're like there's like a lot of dubs now are good, but they're just good. Where like there doesn't feel like a lot of personality
no character to it.
That makes sense. Like it's like a lot of the dubs now are non-union. They're LA. They pick from a smaller pool of actors than ever, it seems. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the voices are just kind of there. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it's not bad, but it doesn't feel like
it's not lively. It doesn't get over it.
Not tell the acting apart from person to person. Like, you can say a show that kind of lends itself to more personality, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Like, that dub's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's like the last thing Ava needs is a flat dub because it's already ambient in other fashions. So to have a dub that just kind of is like there, doesn't service it that well. They didn't do a bad job. It's a perfectly serviceable dub. I think the translation stuff's a bit overblown, especially in an era where you can always reference back. I think the bigger problem is it distracted from any sort of additional contextual thought on the show because we're just like bitching about the process.
Yeah, and the thing is that everyone, like, so much of this so much of the Ava discourse that we wound up with just wound up being like the character assassination of Dan Kanemitsu on social media, which was horrendous. And what blew my mind about that was that people talk about him like he's nobody, like he's just some schmuck that Netflix hired to make a new Ava translation, when he's actually like one of the foundational people for bridging the gap or translating anime going back to like the late 80s and bridging the gap between Japanese studios and American studios, and he is like Kara's guy. He's friends with those guys. If anyone knows like what their intention was when they were developing Evangelion, it's him. He was the guy who shouts, "Mr. President, watch out!" in Penguin Drum. He's part of that whole social group. So he's not nobody, and everyone talked about him like he was just some weirdo that Netflix hired. And that was just so shitty. People are awful.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the other thing that then got lost in that was the extent to which it's all like, you know what? The other reason why there wasn't a whole lot of new Ava discourse, like I think even in the vacuum of that, if they just literally put the old ADV stuff up, one, some people probably would have spent a bunch of time complaining about that, but two, Ava has had a huge impact on anime since, to the point where it's all like a bunch of other shows have kind of run through the same story beats and Bildungsroman kind of better, kind of tighter than Ava. So it's like the extent, it's the idea that like a whole new generation of people are going to see this and have their mind blown. So I'm like, not if they saw Full Equally first.
Well, I mean, I've seen like Madoka Magica. Yeah. Or some of the later.
Yeah, but I mean, for a while, Gainax just did that story again and again and again with like refinement, because like Fully Cooley's basically the same beats. Even Abenobashi's the same beats. Even Mohoro Maddox first season's the same beats. It's what they did for a while, and in that we've seen there's been the discussion to have that additional context, and other fans just like newer fans are just going to take that for granted because that shit's woven in the background as like a side beat to other newer stories.
And also, I think people were overestimating how much interest newer fans would have in Evangelion. Like, I'm sure, like, there's a huge subset of fans who are into retro anime and,
I mean, the idea that somehow newer fans were never going to be able to see it because there wasn't an official release. Fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, that crowd, from what I could tell, like, a lot of them watched it and enjoyed it. people who are closer to our age who didn't watch Evangelion initially went and watched it, and like the reception's been good, but it hasn't been this like huge thing.
Yeah.
So
it does that story well. It does it better than many of the people who tried to ape it. Well, I mean, the one thing I got out of it was when I rewatched it and then I thought of it like, oh, Franks was also lifting these beats from Ava. Like Ava also does touch on those parts. Yeah, no. I was thinking in terms of really.
It runs even deeper than you thought it did.
It's like, oh, they stole even more from that and got it even wronger than I thought. And that was my takeaway from Ava was like, oh, Franks was worse than I thought it was. Shit, I always thought it was bad, but I guess it was even worse.
And keep in mind, we're also talking about the new English translation.
Yeah.
Kara and Netflix produced new translations in just about every language.
Yeah.
And the
Apparently
results were apparently very, very bad.
No, apparently a lot of like the Italian one was like a complete disaster. They had to pull it, so it's like
the Italian one was apparently incomprehensible. It didn't even make sense in Italian. It was like a complete grammatical nightmare.
You use Japanese grammar with Italian words, and Romance languages can't be rearranged that way. English, you can do some goofy phrasing like that because we will flip things around a lot more. Romance languages do not. No, it's verboten. Yeah. Don't do that.
And also the English translation was probably the basis for most of those international translations as well, which not good.
Telephone.
All right, so I think So I think we got to wrap it up. Did you guys have any other thoughts to share on Ava or anything streaming?
Sure.
Adult Swim Canada, KyoAni, or anything before we wrap up?
Wait, what are you guys watching currently?
I don't have much time to watch anime these days, and I'm not watching a lot of TV in general.
I'm watching the new Fate thing about Waver, that I cannot even remember the title of it. It's been pretty entertaining so far. I'm watching New Fruits Basket.
Same. It's good.
Yeah, consistently good. I watched the first episode of The Mom Show.
Same.
Do you love your mom and her 2-hit multi-target attacks? I did not plan on watching the second episode, but when I saw to the horrendous horny depths that episode apparently went to, I had to go and watch it.
I haven't had the chance to watch the second terrible episode yet, but I think I will, just so that I can have watched it and say like, wow, this is a train wreck, and then be done.
But we gotta wait for the Blu-ray release, which is probably going to be uncensored too.
Oh.
Even better. And also the mom show is going to have short OVAs on each of the home video releases.
Oh, those will be bad. Those will be really terrible.
Yeah.
I like how there was this narrow window where people thought this might be a real interesting deconstruction of Isekai. Psych. You thought?
Hey, at least it got right to the point.
Yeah, they didn't bullshit anybody.
Yeah.
I was shocked to see that no one was really talking about Attack on Titan this season because it was really good. There was a lot of fighting titans and a lot of big reveals. They got to the basement and we got the backstory. They got the backstory books.
Mm.
Yeah, I haven't really watched it since season 1. I probably should get back to it. I know there's been a lot of controversy about the handling of the Holocaust imagery and stuff, which
and just also that as people have learned more about the author, where they're like, eee.
Well, it's not really clear. I think apparently a lot of from people who have followed, Corey would be in a better position to comment on that, but it seems that it's more a case of just a careless use of that kind of imagery rather than trying to...
It's a bit insensitive. It's a bit insensitive, the way they use armbands and but I don't there's not for example it doesn't come off as he's a Nazi apologist or anything like that. It should have been the story, these tragic stories should have been handled with a little more care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of the negative discourse I have noticed coming out of Attack on Titan is from people who are clearly not actually following it, and are taking things out of context and jumping on it. Yeah, maybe I'll get caught up on Attack on Titan at some point. And one more show, Oh Maidens in Your Savage Season. That is the best show of the season so far, for sure.
Yeah, I think I need
it. On High Dive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I highly recommend that, the new Mari Okada. Based on a manga written by Mari Okada. It's really good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But we got to wrap up. So yeah, where can folks find you guys on social media? Corey?
Well, I have a Twitter account. It goes by the handle My Anime Waifu, which if you know how to spell that all together, go ahead and try and find me. Maybe one of these days I'll just use my name or something. But
I feel bad that I gave you that nickname.
And Karl?
Karl R. Olson, and I'm not going to say whether to use a K or O-S-O-N or E-N. You just got to guess which Karl R. Olson I am. It's pretty obvious though, on Twitter and everywhere else.
I keep thinking that your handle's Ultra Calistron, but
I just going to use it for the screen name. I should I should honestly probably register that at some point because people will try and at me and be like, nah.
And Karl, of course, made the theme song for this show.
Yeah, actually dropped the drum and bass album, I guess, wide release this month. So, yeah, go download whatever I named that.
The theme song is on his album Packet Flood, and you can find that at ultracalistron.com. You can find me on Twitter at jbetteridge or email me zonencanada@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the show, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, or your podcast app of choice, and I'll see you again.